Hi everybody, it's Mythic. I'm on the road on my way to the PCT. I'm in south central South Dakota right now on the Rosebud Indian Reservation. It's beautiful here with the rolling hills and the green, and I'm going to answer some questions. Both questions that have been submitted online recently, and then also some questions that people have asked me over the course of the year as I've told them that I'm planning on having this adventure. And Southern Minnesota guy is here to help facilitate and ask me the questions, and I'll do my best to answer. The first grouping is going to be an overview of what is the PCT. The next one is going to be the logistics of the PCT. Next one is food and drink on the PCT. The next is fears or dangers. Next one is joys, and then the last one is just miscellaneous category that didn't fit in with anything else. Each group of questions will do in a different state. So we're going to start out with the overview questions.
So first up is just, what is the PCT?
The Pacific Crest Trail is a national scenic trail. I believe it was declared a national scenic trail in 1968. Before that, it was just a series of smaller trails that were kind of connected together, but not officially as part of a national scenic trail. The trail changes a little bit due to trail closures or different things. But in general, everyone agrees that it's about 2,650 miles long. It goes from the states of California, Oregon, and Washington, from the Mexican border all the way to the Canada border.
Why do you want to hike the PCT, and when did you decide to do it?
I first heard about the PCT when a friend gave me her book, Wild by Cheryl Strayed, and I learned that there was this national scenic trail that was not very far away from where I had been living for a few years, and I became obsessed with this idea. This was probably around 2009 or 2010. Became obsessed with doing the trail, but I thought that I had to do it all in one go, and I had to do it with somebody, and I couldn't find anyone who wanted to go with me, that could go with me, and no one that could go with me wanted to go with me. And so I was pretty much resigned to the fact that I just have to do it when I was retired. But then a few years ago, my mom told me that one of her friends was giving a presentation at the local Kiwanians meeting about his hike on the PCT. He said, you don't have to do it all in one go. You can do it in sections, and you don't have to go with somebody. You can do it yourself, and was just such a help with guiding me on gear and giving me some pointers on different things. I really appreciated that. In 2022, I decided to do a portion of the trail in Washington State, and I started at the Columbia River, and I went all the way to the town of Stehekin, which is on the north end of Lake Chelan. About 463 miles, I believe, was that stretch, and that was in mid to late July all the way to Labor Day weekend. It took me 6 weeks to do that stretch. And then in 2024, I was going to go out and finish that last stretch from Stehekin to the Canadian border, and actually into Canada. I'd gotten the permits to hike into Canada and everything, and a forest fire prevented me from being able to do that stretch. So instead, I went back to the Columbia River and I hiked south into Oregon, and that was also beautiful. So I did about a little over 90 miles on that section in 2024, and that was also late July into early August.
In these previous hikes, were you hiking alone or with people?
In 2022, my friend Blue Magic came with me for the first 2 weeks. That was awesome. She is a great planner and helped me kind of figure out what I was doing, and I really, really appreciated that. And then she had to go back home. So for the remaining 4 weeks in 2022, I was solo. Then in 2024, Blue Magic and my sister-in-law came with me for the entire time that we were on trail.
Are you hiking the entire PCT this year?
So I am doing a multi-year thru-hike, which means that I am going to be completing the trail over the course of several years. So like I just talked about, I did a good portion of the Washington section in 2022, a little bit of Oregon in 2024, and so I'm not going to repeat those miles this time, just so that I can fully enjoy doing the remainder of the miles and not feel like I have to really push high mileage days in order to get it all done within the time frame that I have, which is 5 months. Now we're in northwestern Nebraska on Highway 20, heading west out of Chadron, and we are going to talk logistics. So what is the first logistics question?
The first question about logistics is, are you hiking alone?
The majority will be solo, but I am also going to be joined by my friend Blue Magic for a few stints.
Will you be sleeping outside every night?
I won't be sleeping outside every night. When I am on trail, I am camping in my tent. Southern Minnesota guy and I have arranged when we will meet up for resupply so that I can get more food and take a shower, do some laundry, and there will be some nights where I am sleeping inside in a bed and having a little break from camping every night.
While you are hiking, is it hard to find the trail and stay on trail?
For the most part, it is not too hard to find the trail. In Washington and in Oregon, there were portions of the trail where the vegetation had grown really high, but even so, you could kind of tell where you needed to go. I do have the Far Out app on my phone, and there have been a couple times where I wasn't quite sure if I had taken the right turn, and I used the Far Out app to have it show my location compared to the trail on the map. But for the most part, it hasn't been too hard. Now, if I do encounter a lot of snow, then that will make things more challenging as well. So I'm going to have to really keep my eyes open and be aware of where I expect the trail to be to make sure that I'm staying on it. There are not very many trail markers just randomly along the trail. There are pretty decent trail signage when you come to trailheads or trail junctions, but not just a whole bunch of markers as you're hiking along the trail.
How many miles will you hike each day?
I'm planning on starting out around 10 or 11 mile average days at the beginning, and then gradually working my way up so that hopefully by mid to late July I'll be doing low 20-mile days. Hopefully I'll get my trail legs sooner rather than later, and it won't be that much of a struggle. I think the longest trail mile day that I did in 2022 was just about 20 miles. So I think the low 20-mile days are a bit ambitious for me, but I hope that I can get to that point.
You got a comment. I've heard the Washington section is technically the most difficult. What are your thoughts?
Well, I would say that the section just south of Stehekin had so many blowdowns. It had some portions of the trail that were washed out that I had to follow a trail of little purple ribbons tied to twigs and little rock cairns to make sure that I could get across the washout. So if that is the most technically challenging section, then I feel confident that I can handle it. But I don't know. I won't know until I get there. I have heard that there is a portion in Southern California called Mission Creek where it was washed out in, I believe, 2023 and hasn't been restored yet. So you have to wind your way through a washed out river where you're constantly crossing this river back and forth, and then you have to scramble up some pretty washed out river banks. But we will see what we see when we get there.
One person commented that most PCT thru hikers start in early spring and hike northbound from the Mexican border to the Canadian border, and are wondering why you aren't doing that.
Because of the timing. So I had some work and family obligations that required me to stay in Minnesota until the end of May. And so had I tried to go to the Mexican border and do the traditional all in one direction, I would be hiking through the Southern California desert and it would be quite hot. And so I wasn't looking forward to that. So I decided to kind of split the difference and try to hike the sections at their optimal weather conditions. Hopefully my estimations are correct as far as what optimal weather conditions are, and I know that I am super blessed to have Southern Minnesota Guy to be my support team who was able to pick me up at trailheads and transport me to other trailheads. So I'm going to try to do as many miles contiguously as possible, but I definitely will be hopping around from section to section over the course of the whole season.
In your gear video, you mentioned carrying micro spikes and an ice axe, and they're wondering, will you really need those?
Well, I hope to never have to actually use my ice axe, but I have been very closely following the postholer.com website, which reports on the trail snow conditions in California, Oregon, and Washington, and I hope that when I'm starting out in southern Oregon, hopefully I won't encounter any of that snow early on, and then by the time I actually get to the Sierra, which is where most people have to use their microspikes and ice axe, that by the time I get there, there won't be the snow to have to deal with. But I did get them just in case I have them. I'd rather have better traction and be able to self-arrest if I start slipping down a slope than to not have them. So a little extra weight to be safe is worth it for me. We're in southern Wyoming, and I'm going to answer questions about food and drink while I'm on trail.
What do you eat on trail?
Well, you know me, that I love snacks, so a lot of snacks. For breakfast, I don't like to get out my stove and heat anything up, so I'm generally eating either a granola bar, or sometimes you can get smoothies in a pouch. That's a nice different thing, or maybe some homemade granola, that kind of thing. For lunch, I try not to get my stove out for more than one meal a day, so lunches are generally either a cold soak thing like garlic parmesan ramen, or couscous, or things like that, or tuna or chicken pouches on a tortilla, that kind of thing. And then for supper, when I'm with Blue Magic, she brings the commercially prepared meals that generally are 2 servings, and we enjoy those, and that's a nice hot meal at the end of the day. And then when I'm by myself, a friend helped me freeze dry a bunch of smaller portions of different things like beef stew or white chicken chili or spaghetti, so I'll enjoy those. And then, like I said, of course, a lot of snacks scattered here and there, and I went over my top 10 favorite snacks in a video this last winter.
Do you carry all the food you're going to eat all the time?
No, I don't have that much room in my pack for all of that food. What I do is I've prepped a lot of food at home that I've got packaged up into boxes of like X number of days worth of meals, and because I have the privilege of having a full-time trail support team, Southern Minnesota Guy will carry that food in the car or at the rental houses, and then I'll be able to resupply from that. And if I didn't have a dedicated support trail team, I would have to be mailing these things to myself to the post office and then picking them up as I progress down the trail. So nope, I only carry as many days worth of meals as I plan to need until I meet up with Southern Minnesota Guy for our next resupply.
How do you get clean water for drinking and cooking while on trail?
I have a Sawyer Squeeze water filter, and there are multiple brands of that kind of thing. And what I do when I get to a stream, I scoop up the water out of the stream in a pouch that I have dedicated for that purpose, and then I have to squeeze it through this filter, and then the water is ready to drink right away. Sometimes I put different like electrolyte mixes in there, like Element or powdered Gatorade to kind of give it some flavor, and sometimes I just drink it straight. I do have a backup plan in case something happens to my Sawyer squeeze, like if I accidentally let it freeze overnight, that could damage the filter mechanism inside it and I wouldn't know. So I carry water purification tablets with me as a backup plan, and those you have to let the tablet work for 30 minutes, so it's a good backup plan, but I don't like to do that on a day-to-day basis because I don't want to have to wait 30 minutes before I can drink the water.
Do you start a fire each night to cook your food?
I don't. I have never had a traditional campfire while on the PCT because I don't want to have to gather the firewood, and then I don't want to have the responsibility of having to sit and watch it and make sure that it's completely out, and so that just isn't, that's time spent when I'm in camp is not worth it to me. I love a campfire on other times, but I just don't want to have to do that while I'm out on the PCT. So instead what I do is I carry my Jetboil flash stove and I use that to heat up water, and I like that because it's a canister of fuel that has a switch to turn it on and off, so I can completely control when it's on and when it's off, and I don't have to wait and let it all die out and douse it with water and do all of that stuff, which I think is really important. If you are gonna have a campfire while on trail, you really need to be safe about it.
Are there places you aren't allowed to have any kind of open flame at all?
Yes. So, of course, that kind of varies based on the agency that's managing the land, or if it's private land, what time of year it is, if we're in a drought condition or not, or what elevation you're at. So you really kind of have to be checking with the local restrictions as you're headed out on trail, and I anticipate that there will probably be a large portion of Southern California that I won't be allowed to have even a stove in the state of California, but not in Oregon or Washington. You have to go online and take a training and then pass a test, and then you get a campfire permit that you need to carry with you when you are in California if you want to be even using your stove in some areas. So I have done that. I've got the permit printed out and in my pack, and so I may have to get creative with my food choices in those areas where I'm not allowed to use my stove. I may have to do more either cold soak meals or meals that don't need any preparation at all.
You got an email asking if you carry any snacks that aren't full of processed ingredients. They're concerned about sugar spikes and crashes.
Yes, well, I do really enjoy sugar and candy, and so in the past I've kind of used hiking as an excuse to eat a lot of Swedish fish and Snickers bars and that kind of thing, but this year I tried to have healthier options, less processed options, and also more balance in my carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. So as far as less processed, I have a dehydrator, and I dehydrated several kinds of fruit like strawberries, apples, pears, and pineapple, raspberries, and blueberries, just to have some variety. And so that is still fairly high in sugar because they're fruit, but also at least they're less processed and maybe have some more fiber. And then as far as having like a balance, I try to have things like Gorp, good old raisins and peanuts, and M&Ms, because that's got a mix of the sugar and fat in the M&Ms, the fiber and sugar in the raisins, and then the protein in the peanuts. And then and I've made several different kinds of energy bites from the Backcountry Foodie. But I'm sure you can find other recipes for energy bites elsewhere. But I really enjoy the chocolate cherry energy bites recipe from the Backcountry Foodie, and that has a nice mix of sugar and carbohydrates to help and protein to help kind of sustain you as you're hiking. And now we're in western Utah in the Great Salt Lake Desert west of Salt Lake City, and this is a pretty desolate area. And I'm going to answer questions about fears and dangers.
A general question you get a lot is just, aren't you scared to hike on the Pacific Crest Trail?
Well, the short answer is yes, a little bit. The long answer is I try to do as much research as I can about the conditions on the trail and potential dangers, and then try to be prepared for them. Some ways that I do that are that I use far out to research what the trail conditions will be. I try to have the right gear, like ice axe and microspikes for snow, or the right rain gear to keep me relatively dry and warm. And I try to choose my campsite locations, because I feel like if someone wanted to do somebody harm, they're unlikely to do a lot of work to try to find someone to do harm. So I try not to camp within at least 3 or so miles of a trailhead. But all of my experiences with people on the trail have been overwhelmingly positive. You know, if nothing else, people will say, you know, good morning or enjoy your hike, and others are very friendly and helpful, and you know, we have conversations when we're sitting and taking lunch breaks and things. So I have had nothing but positive experiences with other hikers on trail. There are, like I said, certainly dangers, but I try to prepare for them as much as possible by I took a wilderness first aid class so that I can be prepared for those kind of situations. But honestly, I think the thing that scares me the most about hiking is that I might possibly get some kind of food-related intestinal illness that will prevent me from being able to hike. So hopefully that won't happen. I haven't had that experience yet, and I try to be very careful about my food safety. So hopefully I'll keep up my streak of good luck.
A little more specific question you've gotten from a bunch of people is, aren't you worried about bears?
There are bears on the PCT, and I did see a bear when I was hiking in 2022. I am extra careful about my food storage, and in 2022 I used an Ursack, which is a critter-proof bag, and I would hang it in trees overnight when I was sleeping. And I was also super careful not to cook food in my tent, not to eat food in my tent, not even really to touch my tent with my hands after I'd eaten. You know, I always made sure that I sanitized my hands before I would touch my tent, just so that there were absolutely no food smells on my tent. And now this year I am carrying a bear canister, which is just basically a child-proof medicine bottle, but big enough to carry your food, where the bear can't, its claws can't open the lid, and its jaws can't fit around the canister to try to bite it open. So I'm just going to continue to be extra careful with that, and keep my eyes and ears out when I'm hiking. I don't listen to music or podcasts or things like that while I'm hiking, just so that I can be aware of my surroundings and just try to be as careful as possible.
Are there any other wild animals to be concerned about?
I have heard about cougars, especially in California. I've also heard about rattlesnakes in California, and those are two animals I haven't experienced dealing with yet, but similar to the bears, I'm just going to try to be extra aware of my surroundings and not threaten them, and give them plenty of space if we do encounter one another. And I think I can just be as careful as I can be. I do also carry bear spray, in case I encounter a bear. So just try to be as prepared as possible.
One person asked you if you are bringing scorpion antidote.
I am not. And in fact, I really didn't give any thought to scorpions until this person asked me that. I don't carry rattlesnake antidote either, but I am going to be extra careful to, when I get up in the morning and put on my hiking shoes, I usually leave them outside my tent but underneath my rain fly, and I'm going to be extra careful to shake out my shoes before I put them on in the morning, just in case there's a little critter hiding inside.
A big concern that people have expressed is forest fires.
Yes, forest fires are a real valid concern because with climate change and more droughts, they're becoming more and more common. I am going to be keeping track of any of those kinds of things using the Pacific Crest Trail Association's website, where they post information about any wildfires and any trail closures related to that. I feel like I've read up as much as possible about what to do in the case that there is a forest fire, and I'm going to be extra careful when I'm hiking through areas that have formerly been forest fires. So burn zones that were maybe burnt in the past, several years, might have trees that are weakened by the fire that might fall if the wind gets too strong. So whenever I'm choosing a campsite, I'm always assessing the trees around the campsite to make sure that they are living and look sturdy and not like they might topple over if it gets windy at night. Also, burn zones, as you would probably imagine, don't have a lot of shade cover, so they can be very hot and exposed to hike through. So you just have to be extra careful when you're hiking through former burn zones. Now we're in northwest Nevada near the town of Winnemucca, and I'm going to answer some questions about the joys of hiking. Enough with those fears and dangers. And I think the things that I like the best about hiking are being self-reliant and being out in nature with time to really think and contemplate things, and I love gorgeous views, and the PCT has no end of those. So what's our first question?
First question is, are there any particular areas of the PCT or sections that you're most excited to hike?
Yes. The Sierra, I think, is going to be just gorgeous. I'm going to be going through it at a different time than a lot of other PCT vloggers. Most of them are probably entering the Sierra right now on the PCT, and I won't be entering the Sierra until much later this summer, so it will be a lot less snowy. I think it'll be gorgeous. Another area that I'm really looking forward to is Crater Lake in southern Oregon, and the official PCT does not go right by the rim, but there is an alternate trail that does go right by the rim, and I'm really looking forward to hiking that alternate and seeing that gorgeous lake. And then the third place that I'm really looking forward to is the North Cascades National Park, which is north of the town of Stehekin, and I think that's just going to be beautiful as well. So those are my three favorite things that I'm looking forward to.
Another question, just in general, was like, what are some other of your favorite YouTube hikers that you are or have followed?
There are so many. So I'll try to break them into some categories. I'll start with those who are currently or very recently on the PCT, and those would be Liz Kidder, Celestial Hikes, and Heavenly Hikes and Travels. And that last one, I was really enjoying watching them. It's a pair of sisters and a friend, and one of the sisters got injured and had to be airlifted out with I think she broke an ankle bone. So I really hope that they will be able to get back on trail after she's healed up, and I look forward to I hope that I get to see all four of them when I'm on trail. The next category are hikers who have done the PCT in the past but are not currently doing the PCT right now. And the first one is The Hungry Hiker. She was the first YouTuber that I ever watched, and I was especially interested because she did the sections in Washington State that I was trying to be prepared for. And she also has a lot of good recipes for trail food that I've tried. Other ones on the PCT, or that have been on the PCT, are Ash O'Brien Outdoors, Hiking Dancer, Hiking with the Codgers, Homemade Wanderlust, Kristen Norwick, and Travel Right Paint. The next category are hikers who are either on other trails currently or have done other trails in the past that I've enjoyed, especially the Appalachian Trail. And those are Taylor, the New Hampshire hiker, Rissa Romes, Beer and Beautiful Places, who has also done the Superior Hiking Trail and the John Muir Trail, Hike Through This, and Bad Bat. All of them have such a unique perspective on their trail, their joys and concerns, and I love seeing how different people handle different things and the things that they enjoy or don't enjoy. So I've learned a lot from all of those. I will add a link to all of their channels in my video description in case you'd like to check them out too. Okay, we are in Southern Oregon, coming up to Klamath Falls, and now I'm going to answer some miscellaneous questions that I've got that I didn't think really fit in any of the other categories.
A person asks if you read any books while hiking or during downtime while you're hiking.
I am not bringing any physical paper books with me because I don't want to carry that extra weight in my pack, but I have a subscription to Libro.fm, which is a audiobook subscription that supports local bookstores. You can choose what local bookstore you want to support. So I am planning on listening to some audiobooks when I am in my tent before I go to sleep at night. I don't usually listen to anything while I'm actually hiking.
How is the Pacific Crest Trail maintained? Who maintains it?
The Pacific Crest Trail goes through multiple different land use authorities, both governmental and private, and so it depends on what section of the trail you're asking about. The Pacific Crest Trail Association coordinates volunteers to maintain the trails, but they rely on funding for materials and that kind of thing. So it varies from place to place who is in charge of it, but the PCTA is kind of a partner with those different land authorities.
And finally, on a related note, there was a question about whether the recent, federal budget and personnel cuts has been affecting trail maintenance.
Absolutely. So, like I just said, the trail goes through multiple different land use authorities, including the U.S. Forest Service and the National Park Service, and both of those agencies have experienced budget cuts and letting go of staff, and then also not hiring seasonal staff, which they would normally do. And those staff are helping to mark where trail maintenance is needed, including like blown down trees or washed out areas. There's a section in Southern California, the Mission Creek section, that was the victim of some severe flooding in 2023, and so it is all washed out, and it's very difficult to figure out where the trail is. And they were planning on doing some maintenance work to restore the trail this year, but because of those budget cuts, that project is canceled for now. Hopefully it will receive some funding and be able to be done soon. But all of that to say, that's going to affect my experience on the trail and potentially my safety if there are not rangers or other staff members that are out there helping maintain the trail and help run the different ranger stations that I might need to utilize. So it will definitely affect my experience on the trail, and I hope that more funding is available to rehire these experienced staff. I think they lost a wealth of knowledge in these folks that have been a part of this, maintaining this national treasure for a long time. So I hope that the funding is restored. So this concludes the last of my weekly videos. The next time you see me, I will be hitting trail, and I'll be posting daily videos from my experience on the trail, and those will be available starting June 15th. So until next time, come along with me as I hike slow, take a lot of pictures, and eat a lot of snacks. Thanks for watching.